So, in this session we are going to talk about the placement of particles when it comes to the type called random. As you can see in this finalized render, we have a lot of rocks and small stones here. So if we look a little bit closer, I have some big ones here, some big ones here as well, and a little bit smaller here. And this is what you get when you use random. So random is good for things like plants, stones, rocks, or things that are scattered on the ground. And random is also, I think, the most common type to use. So to start, just download placement random rocks to get this as I have it here. And I will give you a walkthrough of what I've done here and how you can achieve this result. So if I go to the particle settings, you can select emitter or hair, and I start with emitter now. Most is the same, but there are a few differences that you will be aware of later in this course. And if we go down a bit here, you can see that I have right now a lot of stones here, so it's about 30,000, so rather many. And I would like them all to be placed instantly, so I use frame start and end to 1. Lifetime doesn't matter, you can put it whatever you want to, I just use the first frame here. The source for all these rocks is what we have here on the side. So what I did was like 5 rocks. I used the rock generator that comes with Blender as an add-in. So then you get those for almost free, so to say. And the same method for landscape, I just use the ant landscape, which also is an add-in that you can put into Blender. So it creates landscapes very, very quickly. And here is how you add it. You just go to Edit, Preferences, write A.N, and then you see Ant Landscape. So just check it and use it. Then you can just press Shift A, Mesh, and Landscape. And now you can produce something like this. So in ground, this scene is about 10 minutes work in total from scratch. And if I then have done that, then of course you also need light, some testing, material, and so on. But the structure is just more or less 10 minutes at max. So that was a little bit about the scene here. So if I go back to these rocks now, you can see that they are like scattered in different ways here. And to make that happen, I first of all use emit from faces. And then you know by now that we work with a lot of faces. So if I now press Tab, you can see all those faces here, and it's needed. So if you're working with random, this is something that you should have. So once more, always have a lot of faces when working with random this way. Then I use random as distribution. I don't use random order and even distribution, and you know why by now. Because you don't want intersection of the stones. You want like every piece to be on its own place. However, you know, random is random. So we get some of those rocks inside each other, but it will get a lot worse if you press random order. Because then you will get many rocks on exactly the same place, but with different types of shapes. In that case, you will like really notice that as a viewer, and it will look just strange. So if you have a lot of particles and you don't want them to intersect, then don't use random order. And the same goes for the one called even distribution. It will also risk that you get a lot more intersections, as you can see, to your particles. So it's all over the place here right now. So I take it away. There are methods to avoid collisions fully. One of those is using, as I showed you really early session, using jittered. There are other methods as well, and I can go through them later on, but not in this session. With my current settings, these things will still happen, so it will not be so noticeable in the final image. If you look here in the final image, there are certainly some intersections, but you have to look very carefully to see some. As a viewer, you will not notice it. If they should, then I can say really bad luck. I can't see many intersections at all here when I go through it. Perhaps one here. So just do like this. Have those two settings unchecked. Then these stones or rocks are rotating on every direction, and that is done by checking the rotation, and then I just change the randomize just a bit here. When I do that, you can see that I get different directions on my stones. I will go through a little bit more how random works in sessions later on. But right now all you need to know is press rotation and then you get it. So it's really easy. To get the variation, I use the collection called rocks, and it has my 5 stones, as you could see. I selected pick random, so we get a lot of random in here. And then we get everything exactly as you can see here in my 3D viewport. However, I did something more to get them spread in like certain places, because you can see the more stones I have on the plateaus, all those flat areas that you can see, they have more stones. And I avoided on the slopes here. And those things you can control using something called weight paint. I think I have glimpsed at it early in the course. But in vertex groups you add weight paint name, and it could be density, and it could be in a length or something else. So I can show you. So with this plane selected, like this, plane or hill or whatever, the emitter, I can now go to weight paint, so you can see what I have here. And then I can go to object data properties. As you can see, I have 2 vertex groups, so you can create many vertex groups if you want to. So in this case, I have one to place the stones, and that is the one called group. And then I have one for the size of the particles, and that is size. So 2 different things here that controls both the placement and the size. If I now select the size, you can see how it looks. I get like bigger particles on the red and smaller on a blue color, if you now look here. Okay, so this is how I did it with those 2. And that is how I can control where I would like these to be. So it's just for me to like draw, make it blue, red, yellow, to change the behavior of the particles. So it's really easy to control. And here is how it works in action. So if I go back, I use group. See, I can find it here. Group as density. And now I can just take it away. You can see that everything here is scattered evenly. And that is not what I want, because it's not natural. So I just use group here. And as soon as I do that, you can see I get this more structured way of putting the stones. However, we can do the same with size. Then nothing happens. So I add size again, nothing happens. Because size does not work with type emitter. So what you need to do when you work with particles at random, and you want all these settings at the bottom here, like, I don't know, clump, kink, roughness, all those things here, then you need to use hair. As soon as you use hair, you can see now that I get bigger stones in certain areas and smaller stones in other areas. And that is because the vertex group length now works. So now when I have it here, I can take it away and you get this same size as before. But when I add it, you get these big variations here. So you get smaller stones, really big rocks on those parts and so on. So now it follows the weight paint very nicely because it's hair. And as I said when we talked about jitter, is that you can control the global size of all the rocks and stones here using the hair length. So if you don't have any hair length, you don't have any rocks, and if you have a big, then it looks like this. So that is a combination of hair length and the size that you use when it comes to random properties. So here I use a very small scale, as you can see, because I have big rocks in the beginning. So it's together with hair length that decide the size of the particles. I also use a little bit of scale randomness, as you can see. And that I use to get some internal changes between the particles. So we get some different sizes for like all the stones here. Okay, so that concludes how random works. And as I showed you, you often work with a combination. With that I mean that you use a weight paint together with all the particle settings here to get everything in place. And if you add more than 10 minutes to a scene, it could be a really nice result. Now you know that, and it's just for you to quickly proceed to the next session, and I will see you there too. So just saying bye for now.